Hello, everyone. Today is Wednesday, February 9th, 2022. COVID vaccine mandates. Comoros forces jabs on unvaccinated. This article is taken from Deutsche Welle, and the one paragraph reads as follows. The reason why there's one paragraph is because it's actually a video on which I will comment. A COVID-19 vaccine is now obligatory in the Comoros Islands, where China's Sinopharm vaccine is used. But the country is going further than most with their mandate. Critics of President Azali Assoumani call his rule autocratic. He issued the vaccine mandate in December by presidential decree. And in the video, there were several interviews. One was of military police, and this military police said that he made light of the mandatory vaccinations on the Comoros Islands. And just in case you don't know where Comoros Islands are, they're in between Madagascar and Mozambique near the Tanzanian border. And the Chinese have had relations with the Comoros Islands at least since the 1970s. And they seem to be pretty friendly relations. But the military police seem to indicate that the mandate by the president was not so bad. But then when the interviewer talked to a doctor, the doctor said that the vaccinations were necessary because a lot of the inhabitants on the islands were not practicing social distancing, and that it was necessary for the president to take this step to make sure that everybody is vaccinated, because it was dangerous for them because they weren't taking care of themselves. And the interviewer said that there was evidence that the vaccine that they were taking was not effective, or not that effective against the new variant, the Omicron variant. But the doctor begged to differ. And then one individual, his occupation wasn't stated, just I guess your average person from the country, complained about it, said that he didn't want to have the vaccination, and that he thought that it was unfair. And at the end of the video, which is fairly short, it's very interesting. It's easy to look up. You can look up Comoros Islands mandatory vaccinations, Deutsche Welle, and it'll come up for sure. And at the end of the video, it's only about not even 5 minutes, I don't think. But anyway, at the end of the video, the person who put together the video said that you were not able to get into a bank unless you had been vaccinated. You couldn't go to school if you weren't vaccinated. Basically, you couldn't do anything official So you, basically, if you are not vaccinated in the country, you are you can't function. And they showed at the beginning of the video, they actually showed how the, I think it was the military police that was interviewed, how the police at, they had checkpoints and they were checking to see if people were vaccinated. And so the Deutsche Welle, the German magazine, or rather newspaper, uh, mentions that it's a Chinese vaccination, and without going into detail about why it's mentioned that it's a Chinese vaccination. Um, but when I look at it, when you think about it, and while obviously the vaccine is available to everyone on the island uh, at the behest of the Chinese government. I mean, I assume, maybe I'm wrong, but I'm assuming that they've donated these vaccines. And you have to wonder, why is it that the rest of Africa is practically begging for vaccines from Europe and so forth, when this country is able to get it easily? So maybe that has to do with the fact that the newspaper went out of its way to mention that it was a Chinese uh, vaccine. But my take on this is I am completely against it. And it shows you what happens when you have these loose cannons out there, these governments, African governments, that aren't accountable to the rest of Africa. What is it's a part of the AU. What is the AU saying about it? It also shows the weakness of the AU, because it hasn't even said anything about it. What about the inhabitants? I don't know what the percentage of them is that don't want the mandatory vaccine, but you would have to imagine that it has to be pretty high, because that's what it is anywhere in the world. In Europe, anywhere you go, United States, people don't want to be forced to be vaccinated. So, and lastly, the reason why I'm against it is because everybody knows, that these vaccines, be they Chinese, Indian, Russian, American, British, whatever, are they've been fast tracked. It takes years to get a vaccine approved in normal times, but they've been fast tracked. So these are experiments, and the medical industry is clear about that. These are experimental vaccines. So we don't, it takes years to find out, a generation to find out exactly what they're able to do when it comes to pregnancies and so forth. So that's why I'm against them being mandatory. I said that about it in the United States. So much more so in an African country.